Okay, we're here today with Kenneth Kelly, and usually what we start with, just ask you a little bit of background information, where you were born, about your parents.
Okay. I was born on a farm in Coopersville,
Okay,
1 mile west of town, in a family of 9. I had 5 brothers and 3 sisters, and my father's name was Asa Kelly, and he was a veteran of World War I, and my mother's name was Hazel Easterly. And she came from a family of 12. They had big families in those days because we worked on the farms, and they needed a lot of kids to do farm work. So I graduated from Coopersville in high school in 1943, and that was June, and immediately started affecting my enlistment in the U.S. Navy construction battalions called Seabees.
okay, well, let's go back a little bit.
Okay.
What year were you born in then?
Oh, I didn't tell you that, did
No.
I? Okay, I was born in 1925, August
25.
21st, 1925.
Mhm.
And of course, that makes me 82 years old.
Okay, and then you said you had 8 brothers and sisters together and 9 kids all together, and so was that hard on your parents growing up through the Depression with all the kids?
We didn't think so.
No, you guys got there pretty
Everyone else
well?
was in the same situation, and
Mhm.
so we got along okay. I think perhaps my mother and father struggled more than most who didn't have as many kids as we did, but my dad was a school teacher,
Oh,
and unfortunately my mother died in 1937.
okay.
But my oldest sister graduated that year from high school, and so she was a surrogate mother for the younger ones.
Mhm.
I had 3 older brothers, and they were all gone from home by then. Well, just one was, as a matter of fact. 2 of them were still in high school. But we got along okay during the Depression, and Dad struggled and did his thing, and we got along.
Okay, so you said he was a World War I veteran. Did he ever share
All
any?
3 of them were in my 3 older brothers were in the Army.
Wow. Did they ever share any of their stories with you?
Share their stories?
About being in World War I, did they ever talk about that?
Oh, in World War II. They were in World War. My dad was in World War I.
Mhm.
Well, yes, my dad was stationed at what was called Camp Custer.
Okay,
Then it went on to become Fort Custer
Right.
in World War II, and now it's a Battle Creek Industrial Park.
Mhm.
And Dad was training troops. He was a lieutenant, and told some of the stories. As a matter of fact, we had some dice at home, and Dad said one day he was out walking down the street and hear a bunch of the boys shooting dice, and they weren't allowed to gamble, and he confiscated the dice, and we had them at home. And all my older brothers were in the Army, and it's kind of ironic. My oldest brother went to Michigan State. Well, so did all of us except one. And he was in ROTC, and went all 4 years in ROTC. So when he graduated in 1941, he was given a lieutenant's commission. And ironically, he went immediately to Camp Custer, where he was stationed. And further ironically, my dad and mother were married when he was in the Army, stationed at Fort Custer. And this brother was born while they were living in Battle Creek. So I always kind of joke about it because I spent 50 years selling overhead cranes and hoists and monorail equipment. And after Fort Custer became the industrial park, Japanese and German firms came in there and started manufacturing firms. I sold them equipment for use in their factories. So I always thought that was another irony of life.
Yeah.
We were, my brothers and I and my dad, we fought against the Germans and the Japs, and now here I am selling them equipment in our country. Okay.
While you were in school, did you participate in the ROTC as well?
No, we didn't, I was only in high school, and of course, they didn't have it in high school then. And so I enlisted as, back then, it was an apprentice seaman. And so I was an enlisted man and served 2 years and 7 months in and after World War II as a Navy man in the U.S. Navy construction battalions.
Okay. Well, while you were in school, did a lot of people start talking about the war, feeling
Oh,
that they might be
absolutely.
drafted as soon as they got out?
Oh, absolutely. As a matter of fact, I don't know the exact number. I would guess maybe there were 8 to 10 of my classmates who enlisted while school was still
While they were still
going
in school.
on, and they left and went to
They
wherever.
didn't make them finish yet? They just let them?
No, and then when we graduated, they were awarded their diplomas, even though they didn't finish their last 3 or 4 months or whatever it was.
Okay. So then Pearl Harbor got attacked while you were maybe 16 years old?
Correct. You got it. Very good. Are you a math major?
No.
Okay. So, yes, Pearl Harbor, as a matter of fact, we were home on the farm. I don't know, maybe my 2 older brothers, immediately older than me, were there. And we were listening to a radio program on a Sunday afternoon, and they interrupted the program and said, the Japanese have bombed Pearl Harbor. We all looked at each other in wonderment and asked, where is Pearl Harbor? Fortunately, a short time later, they came on and told us that it was located in the Hawaiian Islands, and that many of our fleet ships were there and so forth.
Was that a surprise to you?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. We knew that the war was going on, and Roosevelt was doing things, President Roosevelt was doing things to aid the British, and, but as a senior in high school, you're not too much interested in world affairs.
Right.
You're more interested in what's going out of school and when you're going to graduate. And then, of course, we boys, who just as soon as we turned 18, we would have to register for the draft and probably be drafted a short time thereafter. So many of us went ahead and enlisted so we would have our choice of service, because usually draftees went right into the Army and quite frequently became infantrymen, rifle towers, as we called them in the Navy, or dog faces.
So before you enlisted then, did you notice, due to the war, any changes in the society or like the economy?
Oh, absolutely. I worked part-time in a gas station, and of course they instituted gas rationing.
Oh.
So I had to learn how to operate the gas station and take coupons from people for how much gas they could have, 4 gallons. And I read recently that it changed to 3. I didn't remember that. I could remember 4 gallons with an A card. You had A, B, C, and D cards, depending on the needs of your travel.
So would it be like they could only have 4 gallons a week, or?
A week,
A
1
week?
week, correct.
Wow,
Mhm.
it's not very much.
That was an A card. That's not very much, is it? But if you're only going to the grocery store, or the feed store, or something like that, why, people could manage on it. And then there, of course, there was a little cheating going on, but we were checked on from time to time by government employees whose job it was to enforce the rationing program. And of course, another thing was going on too. We collected scrap metal. We invited our customers to bring scraps right here to our gas station. We had a big pile out there. And, periodically, someone would come pick it up and deliver it to wherever they melted the steel down.
Did they pay you for it?
Pardon?
Did they pay you for it, or you just?
No, it was free.
Okay.
We just got rid of it.
So how long were you out of school before you enlisted?
When I enlisted, even while I was still in school, I was checking out opportunities of different aspects of enlistment.
Mm-hmm.
So it ended up that I was taken into the Navy in August of 1943. And I graduated in June of 1943, so
Not very long.
2 months.
So why did you choose the Navy?
Well, as I told you, if I went into the Army, and all my brothers were in the Army, the Navy looked better to me. You know, we had, the Navy almost always had clean beds and good food and clean clothes and so forth. So we didn't have to struggle like the Army guys did, although sometimes after the war commenced and we got into the South Pacific, why, when we'd go to a place the first time, we had to struggle a little and live in a pup tent and sleep on the ground and didn't have fresh water available except in blister bags and so on.
Okay, so when you first got into the Navy then, where did you go for training?
All right, I went to Camp Perry, Virginia,
Okay,
and that was a training base near Williamsburg.
okay,
And almost all of the Seabees, and there were 350,000 Seabees in World War II. Almost all of them were got their boot training there.
Mhm.
And then when they get a group of 1,100 men together, they form a battalion with them.
okay.
In the war, there were 145 battalions formed. So I got there in August, and I think I left in late October or early November and went to Gulfport, Mississippi, a place called Camp Holiday for advanced training.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the kind of training we got was military training per se. You know, we learned how to march together and how to obey orders and how to salute and all that sort of thing. But then we also were given infantry training
Mm-hmm.
because our units were involved in every major installation or what do I want to say, invasion.
Mm-hmm.
All during the war, they were all involved, and then sometimes we would get there as early as, while the battle was still going on, get to the locations of the invasion. And we had to perform infantry tactics to protect ourselves and get the ground cleared where we were going to make an advanced base. That was our primary duty, by the way. Building advanced bases, military bases on jungle islands primarily, so that Army and Navy, also Navy ships, and Marine Corps and Air Corps could operate from to continue going north in the Pacific.
Mm-hmm. So then you went to Mississippi for advanced training.
Yes.
And how is that different from when you were in Virginia?
Well, we continued with infantry training, and we did some things like we went out on bivouac, we called, and it was cold in December in Mississippi. I thought it'd be nice and warm, but
Yeah.
we lived in tents out in this bivouac area, and we had a little stove in the tent. It's kind of funny. We had a little, what was called a Sibley stove, and it looked like a big funnel inverted, see, like this, and then the pipe goes up and went through the ceiling of the tent.
Okay.
Well, the tents weren't fire resistant, so if the fellows living in the tent stoked up the fire, sparks would fly out and land on the tent and start the tent on fire. So we had to go out into the woods, of course, to and we're in a wooded area, to get firewood. And then we'd stack it in our tent, and we would use a saw and an axe to cut it up. And then they put guys on guard duty, watching for tents catching on fire. So I remember the night we were on guard duty, and that was at night, by the way. We thought we got smart. So what we did was we watched for the fire starting on the tents. But we'd also sneak some wood out while the tents where guys were sleeping. Then we didn't have to go out and cut our own wood. So that was fun. But anyway, all we practiced an invasion on an island out in the Gulf of Mexico. We went on barges and practiced going ashore from the barge and so on. And what other things we did? Oh, we went on Liberty. See, in the Navy, they call it a pass, going out for, say, 12 hours or 24 hours. And we called it Liberty in the Navy. And we went to New Orleans.
Okay.
See, that's 60 miles away. And wandered around in New Orleans. And of course, I was 17 when I enlisted. Then I turned 18, so about 3 weeks after I enlisted.
Okay. And
of course, like it is now, was then, you couldn't buy hard drinks in bars until you were 21.
Okay.
So we didn't really have much to do except wander around, look at the sights. One little incident occurred that was kind of interesting. So, we would be with other guys our age as a general rule, and we'd wear our navy blues. Let's see, this uniform I have on here is dress blues. Those
Okay.
are dress blues. And they have 3 stripes on the collar, and they have 3 stripes on the cuff. And the cuff is held together with 2 buttons. Well, the cool thing to do was you unbutton the buttons and you fold that back, see? So a bunch of guys were, and I was wandering around with them, and they did that, and for some reason I didn't do it. And we got stopped by the Shore Patrol, which is the Navy military police. And they cornered all those guys who had their cuff turned up, and they said, "You're out of uniform. You're going to the holding pen for 5 hours as punishment, and button up your uniform." And they did, and I didn't. So I always get my sleeve cuffs buttoned. So anyway, one thing happened when we were back at Williamsburg, back at Camp Perry. By the way, Camp Perry is still in existence in a different form.
Does it have the same name?
No, it's called the Farm.
Okay.
It's the training base for CIA.
Oh.
And I tried to go and visit one time. I didn't realize it. 25 years ago, I was down in Virginia on business. Well, I'd stop and see what's going on. They wouldn't let me go aboard. And then I found out later that's why, because that's a secret place for the CIA. But so then we were formed into battalions, as I mentioned earlier, at Camp Perry, and the battalion I was in was the 127th. And so we formed a battalion, and we trained as a battalion from that time on. And when we got to Gulfport, word came around that they needed men immediately in the Pacific. And they asked each of the battalions there might have been half a dozen, I don't know how many, to select men from their outfits to go into this special group to be sent to the Pacific. Well, what the outfits did, of course, they selected the people they didn't want anymore and said, "Sure, why not, get rid of troublemakers and laggards and no-gooders and so on." Well, I wasn't selected, see, but one of my friends was. "Hey, Kelly," said, "why don't you go with us? That's why you're in, to go out there, and so go ahead." So I volunteered.
Okay.
And I did this contrary to advice we got when we first went to Camp Harry. We had an old-time chief petty officer lecture to us one day. He told us a couple of things. And one of them was a little crude, but I'll tell you, it's all right if it goes out there. It's not that crude. He said, let me give you some advice. This is something you should remember all the time if you're in the Navy. And that is the Navy does things three ways. I should say, there are three ways to accomplish a mission. The right way, the wrong way, and the Navy way. And another thing he says, how did it go now? Okay. He said, another piece of advice I want to give you is keep your mouth shut and your asshole open and never volunteer for anything. Okay. So I went contrary to what he did, and I was okay. So we got together, there were 600 of us, and we shipped out of New Orleans on January 1st, 1944.
Okay, so then it looks like...
headed for the Pacific Theater. We were on a ship called the Hawaiian Shipper, and there were 5,000 troops on there. There were Marines and our group and so on. And left New Orleans, and what a trip we had. I'm telling you. As a matter of fact, that's why I brought this along. You may not be able to see this in there. This is anyone who has never crossed the equator
there you go.
is a polywog.
Okay.
And when you cross the equator in the Navy, you become shellback. And this is my certificate that was given me for crossing the equator.
That's
and
cool.
Suffering through an initiation by the Navy guys on board, and became a shellback.
What was the initiation like?
Oh, well, there were so many of us, and there were so few initiators, so they just squirted us with saltwater hoses, and some of the guys who were a little more outspoken or something, they cut all their hair off, or they wiped their face with axle grease and things like that. It wasn't, and then, but then King Neptune, we had to go up and bow to him. They had a guy dressed like this, you know, with a crown and a trident and so forth, and we had to go by his throne and bow to him, and that was our initiation.
That's funny.
Yeah, that's part of life. These little things we have, I have stuck on there. Are receipts I received for war bond purchases. Back then, the government issued what they call war bonds, and I paid I paid $18.75, and then send the bond home to my dad, and it would accumulate interest, and in 10 years it would become a $25 bond, and I could cash it in. As a matter of fact, I cashed mine in when I got married in 1946, and used them to finance our wedding. Okay, so we went to New Orleans, got on this Hawaiian Shipper, and took off for the Pacific. And we went through the Panama Canal.
Okay.
And that's the only time on the Hawaiian Shipper we had freshwater showers. Otherwise, all the showers were saltwater, because Gatun Lake is part of the Panama Canal, and that's freshwater. And so the water they pumped into the shower source was fresh. Stopped at the Galapagos Islands, never went ashore, because we had a destroyer escorting us, and the destroyer had to refuel. Then we steamed on across the equator and got to Tahiti, and we stopped, and the destroyer had to refuel again. And then we went on to New Caledonia, and we stopped there. And there we had an exposure that showed us that we're really at war. 2 airplanes came out and flew over us, and we could see they were Navy airplanes.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them, and they flew quite low over us. And of course, we're all up there on deck watching. And we noticed one's engine didn't sound right. And so we were watching it carefully, and pretty soon it quit, the engine quit, and it crashed into the water. And it was close enough so we could see what was going on, and we saw them put out a little orange life raft, and then 2 guys got on it, and our destroyer went and picked them up. You know, we thought, well, they said, boy, you can get hurt out here, can't you? So then we went on to, after 2 days in the harbor there, we went on to New Hebrides Islands. See, New Caledonia and New Hebrides were the first, among the first islands that were used as advanced bases for, you know, doing all kinds of things you have to do. Building up supplies of ammunition and supplies of fuel and people and food and so forth. And so we went ashore, they took us off that ship at Espiritu Santos. That's the island of New Hebrides. And they didn't have any barracks for us, so they put us in a church.
Okay.
And I always joke about that. Here, I had a rifle, I carried a rifle with me, and incidentally, when we were on the troop ship, we couldn't use our sea bags. They put them in a different location. Our sea bags in the Navy at that time, where we carried all our clothes, and we carried bedding too. We had a mattress and a mattress cover and blankets and so forth issued to us. I don't know if we had a pillow or not. But and then we had a backpack, and that's what we had on the ship to carry our clothes and our canteen, and we never were given any ammunition. We didn't have that. And we had a steel helmet and our bayonet, and we had a 1903 Springfield rifle that we carried. But anyway, I joke about staying in the church because I used my backpack as a pillow, and my rifle laid in the pew beside me, and here I slept officially in a church with my rifle beside me. But then they put us on another ship called an LST. That's a landing ship tank. And we went to Guadalcanal.
Mm-hmm.
Got off there and stayed there one day and got on another ship. We were at a place called Cuca Beach. That was part of the historical location on Guadalcanal. And we went to New Guinea.
Okay.
And got off the LST. So we stayed there about 2 weeks, and they put us in barracks. That was nice. Then we could wash our clothes and have good food, but they put us to work too. So my assignment was to work at night out in an ammunition dump, loading ammunition. This is Navy ammunition, and some of those shells are big shells, big long tubes like this and this big around, and weighing 40 to 60 pounds. And we load them on a truck, and then the truck would haul them to the shore or the docks, and then they'd load them on Navy ships. And I got a sliver in this finger right here, right in the part that stuck out the farthest. And the next day I went to the sick bay, and a corpsman dug it out for me and put, used disinfectant and all that sort of thing. But I developed an infection, serious infection. They called it a felon. Yeah, and it got so bad they had to slice open the side of my finger. And I was incapacitated because of this for a while. As a matter of fact, my finger, if you notice how skinny this one is compared to this one here, see? Skinny.
Yep.
And anyway, we got another ship. And we still haven't seen any action or any activity and other than loading ammunition. And this we called a rust bucket. It was a troop ship and not very well kept. And we headed for the Admiralty Islands.
Mm-hmm.
And we were in a convoy. We had 2 destroyers escorting the convoy. And we're steaming along, fat, dumb, and happy, and all of a sudden our ship stops. And they got everyone up on deck, and they said, watch for submarine periscopes. We're broke down and we can't, our engine won't run anymore. You know, we thought, my gosh, what's going to happen? And we could see the other ships, the convoy kept going. A short time later, one of the destroyers came up beside our ship, and they shouted back and forth, because our radio, radio in our ship didn't work because the electrical system had broken down. So we heard the exchange, verbal exchange. The destroyer said, what's the matter? You know, we're shouting through megaphones, and we all listened. And our people said, we're broke down, our electrical system is dead. And the Navy guy said, how long will you be? We're listening carefully, and our people said, we don't know. We thought, my gosh. Well, the Navy guy said, well, I can't let those other ships out of my sight. So when they get way over there, close to out of sight, I have to leave. Oh my gosh, what the guy. And here we are getting in the water. But fortunately, in the group that we had with us, in my group, we had guys who were experienced electricians, and some of them knew how to work that machine that was broke down. And so they helped them fix it.
That's good.
And we got started, and we caught up with the convoy and sailed on to Los Negros Island in the Admiralties. And so our trip there took 3 months. This was March 30th. We left New Orleans on January 1st, 44, and we got in Los Negros March 30th.
Okay.
And the battle was still going on, as a matter of fact. I got a medal for being in the Pacific Theater. Here's my medals.
Let's see. Okay, what is each one
All
for?
right. And see, this one here is for the Asiatic Pacific Theater. And see the two little stars? Those are called battle stars.
Okay.
So if you're in a combat area and participate in the activity there, you get a battle star. So I got two of them, one for Admiralties and one for Okinawa. And this is a World War II Victory Medal.
Okay.
And the one under here you can't see, but it's red, white, blue, and so forth.
Right.
That's the American Theater, they call it. See, this yellow one is Pacific Theater. See, this is same thing. See, that's the Pacific Theater. This one on top here is a good conduct medal I got after the war.
And what are those two little?
Oh, these things here. This is an eagle with a circle around it, and we put those on our uniforms when we were discharged from the service, so they knew you were a discharged person from the service. So this is the one I had on my uniform back, on that uniform right there. And this one here is a pin that was given to us in 1995. They had a return to Okinawa program for all the military guys who were there in 1945. We went back 50 years later, see. We went back 50 years later to the battle sites, and this is one of the things they gave us.
That's cool.
Yeah, it is cool. As a matter of fact, it says on it, a grateful nation remembers. World War II, 1995, 1945. Okay. So we got to Los Negros and we joined the 78th Seabees. Well, actually, there was a Seabee regiment there. A regiment consisted of 3 battalions, and the 40th, 82nd, and the 78th. And they split us up 3 ways to join those battalions. And I was put in the 78th in my sweatshirt that I have on.
Yep.
And this is a symbol of the 78th, and of course it says 78 CE. But this symbol was drawn by Disney's artists in 1943.
Okay.
The 78th, before I joined it, was stationed at Oxnard, California, a place called Port Hueneme. And they, some of the guys went down to Disney Studios and asked them to design another symbol for us, and they designed this one. See, this Seabee is our symbol, the Seabees. I've got it on my cap too, here as a matter of fact. If you can see it. A fighting building bee.
Yep.
You see, he's got a Tommy gun and a hammer and a monkey wrench, and he's got a growly looking face, and he's smiling in this one, I think.
Yes, that one
Yeah.
looks like he's nicer.
So I was attached to the 78th Battalion, and it's kind of interesting. We weren't too well received by the other personnel
Why is that?
because they thought, oh, they'd been there now. I think they left October, November 1943 and went to the South Pacific. So we joined them in March. So they'd been there at least 6 months.
Okay.
And they saw us come in and they thought, oh, this means we're going to stay long. They're not going to send us back for rejuvenation or whatever you call it.
Okay.
So, but we survived. Well, that doesn't matter. A little thing happened. So they issued tents to us. And we teamed up. I think there were 6 to a tent. Tents were what were called 16 feet by 16 feet pyramidal tents. And they told us we were in C Company. See, the battalions had 4-letter companies, A, B, C, and D, and the headquarters company, 5 companies. So we were assigned to C Company, and they told us where to put our tent up. So 6 of us got together and got our tent and laid it out and started putting it up. And we tried to drive the wooden stakes into the ground. And they'd go through the sand, and then they wouldn't go anymore. And we hit them hard with a sledge, and they split and break. And then we looked around us, and we noticed all the other tents had reinforcing rod stakes instead of wooden stakes. And we thought, that's what we better get. And sure enough, we asked them, they gave us reinforcing rod. But we were in a nice place. We're on a sandy beach. I will show you a picture later.
Okay.
We're on a sandy beach with palm trees all around us. See, this is another outfit story, but they had good pictures too. I had good pictures. Yeah, here. See, we're in an area like this, and see, those are all palm trees and nice rows and stuff, because those were planted, we heard, by, I think it was the Colgate Palmolive Peat Company, to harvest coconuts. Those are coconut palms. See, you can see them down here too.
Right.
And made a nice area. We're on a nice sandy beach, and
Was it really warm?
oh gosh, it rained every day. We were only 150 miles from the equator, and but you know, you got used to it and didn't pay much attention. Well, we didn't wear many clothes either. We wore a pair of shorts and shoes and a cap, and that was about it. So all the guys, most of the guys, got burned pretty black, but we're good. And, so I was assigned. Our camp was right next to an airfield. As a matter of fact, it was the first thing captured on the Admiralty Islands because they wanted the use of the airfield.
Okay.
And so what we did, along with the other battalions, is extend and enlarge the airfield facilities so we could use 4-engine bombers, our airport guys. The airfields that the Japanese had built were okay for smaller planes, but when we get the big B-24s is what flew off there. And so we did it quite quickly. Probably within 10 days we had it large enough and good enough for B-24s with full bomb loads and full gas loads to fly off and land. And one morning I was in our company headquarters tent to get a work assignment, and we heard, all of a sudden we heard an explosion. And by the way, the B-24s were taking off. They start at 4 o'clock in the morning and take off to go for their bombing runs. We heard a big explosion and looked in the direction. We saw a huge massive smoke and flame going up. And so 3 or 4 of us quick got on the truck and went down there. We thought it was near our ammunition, or our fuel dump. We had an area that's set aside for all of our fuels. We probably had 30 bulldozers, 50 dump trucks, cranes, a lot of construction equipment. And so we went down there and found it wasn't the fuel dump. Our neighboring Seabee camp, the 40th Seabee, was halfway down the runway, and this airplane was taking off, and 2 of the engines conked out on the left side, port side, we call that maybe, and it crashed into a Seabee camp and exploded. And there were about 35 Seabees killed and about 70 wounded, and all the airplane guys were killed. And that was quite a mess. Of course, we were looking around, walking around there, and we walked by a hole in the ground that had been caused by the explosion, and looked down, and there were 4 bombs laying in there. And we were standing there looking at them. Like a senior petty officer came up and said, "You guys better get out of here. Those things might go off any time." We got out of there. So that was one great experience. But I worked there on the island with other guys, and older men. See, the Seabees recruited older construction men with experience.
Okay.
And the average age was probably 37, whereas the average age of the Marine Corps, for instance, battalions might have been 23. So to an 18-year-old guy, 37 was an old timer. But
Yeah.
we probably had 25 men who were veterans of World War I.
Okay.
And anyway, I learned, of course, growing up on a farm during the Depression, we had to make do with a lot of things because we didn't have money to buy them. Well, we had the same kind of activity in the Pacific Theater. That the government or the supply system tried to furnish supplies and equipment and materials that we could use. A lot of times, we had to make do with what we could find or put together from local available materials. As a matter of fact, we had a sawmill crew that was out in the jungle cutting trees and providing logs, and then they cut them up into boards. As a matter of fact, one of the jobs I worked on was building a dock out into the harbor for boats or ships to come and tie up to. Well, rather than use materials that we got from the States, we did use piling. We had stateside piling, and then, but we used the wood from our sawmill crew. Well, we kind of joked about it. We called it the Thick and Thin Lumber Company because their boards weren't all the same thickness as they were supposed to be. And we joked about it, but they did a good job. And the other thing about it is we used some exotic woods, like teak wood, for instance. instance, that grows in the jungle, and we cut it up, and they had teak wood decks on our lawn, on our docks. But anyway, we got along and we're good, and we were complimented many times by the higher echelon officers because of the quickness of how we could accomplish construction projects. And, well, a couple of the reasons for that is, number one, we didn't have anything else to do. And number two, we worked 24 hours a day, 24/7 when we first got. We usually worked shifts. As a matter of fact, the day the war ended, in the Pacific Theater, I was on the third shift driving a big tractor, and it was 2 o'clock in the morning when we learned about the war being ended. And the way we learned, this was on Okinawa. Now I'm on Okinawa. This is after I'd been out there about 18 months. And the way, well, we had air raids regularly. We had them in the Admiralties too. We had air raids, and we had to shut off all our lights. And we usually had a movie every night. We had to shut down the movie and wait till the all clear. But when we were on Okinawa working out on an airfield there, we were working on an airfield for B-29 bombers to bomb Japan. B-29 was the biggest bomber built during the war by anybody. And our airfield, airstrip was 12,000 feet long, 2 miles long. And anyway, I drove an earth mover, this tractor I drove, pulled what we call a pan, but the official term is a scraper, hauling dirt. But anyway, when we had air raids on the tractors, we couldn't hear the sirens because our people had put sirens up to warn us of air raids. So the way we knew we were having air raids, we could see the anti-aircraft guns shooting tracer boats or cannons, shooting cannon shells that exploded in the air, and we saw that going on. We quickly, we were working with lights on, of course, at night, and we quickly turned our lights off and crawl under our tractor until they stopped shooting, and then we go back to work. Well, when the war ended, I was out there working, and we saw the tracers going up, and we saw the bomb out of the shell bursts, and we quick shut down our engines and crawled under our tractors as a bomb shelter. And by the way, we never got bombed. They always were after the Navy ships. But we're laying there, and we could hear people cheering. What's going on? So one of our guys, and there was an anti-aircraft group nearby where we were working. One of our guys went over there and said, "What's the matter? How come? What are you cheering about?" And they said, "Oh, the war's over." And we said, "Great!" So here it is about 2 or 3 in the morning, and we said, "Well, we don't have to work anymore." So we shut our tractors down, and we had a truck that hauled us. We were about 2 miles back to our camp. Went back to camp, and we got chastised for quitting early. But within a week, we'd stopped anyway, and we're all done. Well, anyway, back to the Admiralties. We had another occurrence that was really tragic and sad. We were working on, I was working on a dock out in what was called Seattle Harbor. See, the Admiralties were one of the largest bases built in the Pacific. And it was built primarily at its location for the invasion and retaking of the Philippines. See, it was, and it had one of the best harbors in the Pacific, too. So, combination with its location and harbor facility availability, that's why they decided, actually, we worked under General MacArthur, incidentally. Our action out through the Pacific was General MacArthur's area of responsibility, so that's who our kingpin boss was. But anyway, I was working on this dock, and there are a bunch of ships in the harbor. There are always a lot of ships, Navy ships, ammunition ships, tankers, troop ships, hospital ships, then little ships. Anyway, I was working on something with my back to the harbor, and one of the fellows in front of me said, "Hey, look!" And a strange look on his face, and I looked up at him, and I turned around and looked. Again, a huge mass of smoke and flame going up from apparently a ship in a harbor. And another one of the guys who was quicker thinking than the rest of us said, "Oh, we better get under shelter, because something may rain down on us and hurt us." So we crawled on. We're working with a big boom crane, and we crawled under that, but didn't land. Nothing landed nearby us, but we found later that the explosion was an ammunition ship called the Mount Hood, and it exploded, and there were 300 men on it. 380. It was a Navy ship, all gone. Later, divers went down, and they did find the hull of the ship, the portion that was in the water that didn't get destroyed by the blast, because the blast primarily went up. And there were about 75 people killed on surrounding ships from flying debris, shrapnel, and so forth. And it was a sad. I got some pictures of the explosion here. This is one of my folders.
Okay.
See, these are pictures that were taken of it.
There's a big explosion.
Yes, yes. Same thing again, using the same pictures. This is what we did there. We built a lot of, those are Quonset huts.
What are they called?
Quonset huts.
Okay.
Matter of fact, I have another picture.
What were those for?
Barracks primarily. But we made hospitals out of them, and we made warehouses and so forth. And here's some pictures one of my shipmates built. Painted. This is part of a Quonset hut being constructed. This is a structure for it. See, they're round like that, and then we'd put sheeting on the outside and wood floor on the bottom. And then we had ends in them, and we had doors and windows in the ends, and that's part of a Quonset hut.
That's a cool picture.
Manufacturers and other ones. This is a tomb on Okinawa. These are family tombs, and they're very typical. Built into a hillside, and the family would wait till the bodies had decayed and only the bones were left, and they'd put them in a container and store them in these tombs.
Weird.
And, this is a scene of a convoy when we were headed to Okinawa. Oh, and here is a picture of an aircraft going on, I should say, an air raid going on. And they had big searchlights, and these are zeroed on a plane up there, and you can see the red bomb or shell bursts. And but as I say, they never really bombed us. They were after the Navy ships. Here's how it looked when we first arrived at an island. These are pup tents. Actually, we call those pup tents, but the official term is a shelter half. Each sailor carried a half of one. So then when you want to put them together, two of them would make a little tent like this, and just room enough where you lay down in it with your sleeping gear. This is PBY, it's called, Navy PBY, Patrol Bomber, I don't know what the Y stands for. And you can see it's an amphibious plane. It could land on the water. And this particular one was painted by my friend Nat Ballantone. And 2 weeks after he was finished painting, it disappeared. They went out on a mission and never returned.
Wow.
And they didn't, nobody ever knew what happened to it.
So your friend painted all of those?
He painted all these pictures, yes.
Did he do it afterwards or while he was
this
there?
during the war,
Wow.
yes. Well, while we're looking at pictures, during the war, we had what we called a ship store. And that was a store where we could go and buy toothpaste and shaving cream and razor blades and candy and so forth. So they made a profit and kept the money and accumulated it. And after the war, they put together this. It's called our logbook. See, Navy's in operation always have logs. That's the records, or ongoing record, and this is ours. And they kept track of each of our locations and took pictures of all of the platoons. You can see each one of these groups is a platoon. As a matter of fact, I'm in one of the pictures. Oh, here, I've got one. I think that's me right there. Does it look like me?
Yeah, it looks like more like that picture.
No, like that picture. Yes, I was a little younger then. And as a matter of fact, I want to show you this. If I could get the page open to it. See, this is the picture of one of the guys after the war.
And then there's a girl.
Yeah, and this is Phoebe, the female Seabee.
Okay.
But this was done during the war by Disney Studios, as a matter of fact. There's Walt Disney's signature. And these last pages are the roster of our outfit. Oh, something else I have here. This is my family. These are my older brothers and I. Two different pictures. They had an article in the Coopersville Observer that told about us here, that we are. And then here's an earlier picture individually. Here I am, the only sailor in the group. And my oldest brother this one's my oldest brother. He spent 30 years in the Army. This is my next older brother, and he was a lieutenant also. As a matter of fact, we met while we were on Okinawa.
Oh, wow.
Yes. Then the other brother was a sergeant. But anyway, while we were on Okinawa, he looked me up, and we got to get together. Now I have a souvenir from that Okinawa battle. You want to see it?
Sure.
This is a Japanese pistol.
It looks pretty different.
Oh, well, it's patterned after the German Luger,
Okay.
and it has a story behind it. My brother was in on the invasion of Okinawa, and he patrolled kind of behind the lines because he had command of what they call the anti-tank platoon. He was trained in artillery, and they had an artillery piece to shoot at tanks. So because of his training, they put him in charge of that unit. So sometimes they'd be called up to the front lines if they had to take a unit out for some reason or other, but most of the time they were behind the lines. And one day they were out patrolling, and they found this couple killed, dead. Japanese, and they thought it was an Okinawan girl.
Uh-huh.
The officer had this pistol in his hand, and he had apparently shot the girl and then shot
Oh, wow.
himself. Mhm. So that's the story. So he thought he'd give it to me. He had another one, but his family lost it some way. But I've kept mine over the years.
We pause a second. I need to switch.
I have this clipping from the Grand Rapids Press, early August 1943, and that's me right there.
Right before you.
Maybe. Mhm. And they took our picture, and that's me. All right. Just recently, I went to Gulfport, Mississippi for an all Seabee reunion. And I played golf with this guy, but they were having a special ceremony while we were there to install a new Seabee battalion, current one. So these are present-day Seabees,
Okay.
and here's a little picture of the Seabee they got built there at Gulfport, because it's
That's
quite
cool.
historic. And here we are, the golfers.
And those are men that you were in the Navy with?
No, this is me. I was World War II. This guy was a Vietnam Seabee,
Oh,
and this guy is the current Seabee.
Okay.
He's active duty Navy right now. Here are some of the things we did during the war.
Mhm.
See, here's a crane picking coral out of the water, and then we'd use that coral like concrete in the surfaces of the runway and
is it
roads.
strong enough?
It'd be crushed coral. And we'd we'd roll it with a roller and sprinkle it with salt water. And it would bond together almost like concrete. And we used that for airfields and roads and so on. See, here's some more of that work going on. These aren't very good pictures. This is called a sheep's foot roller. I operated one of those for a while, driving a tractor pulling it. This is a little island where we built an airfield on. See, that's called Ponam Island. And I've got another picture of it, what it looks like today. I think I can find it. I might have it in there. I can't find it right now. I do. Okay. Oh, those aren't very good. You can't see those. See, and here's the sort of thing we encountered. Here's another picture of all the palm trees. And then here's what we did. These are Quonset huts. They're bigger size than the ones that the other picture. This is a hospital building we built out of Quonset huts. And here we are learning to swim, and here we are sitting on a ship waiting for chow. And here we are getting on a ship. This is a picture of Bowman. Oh, here's the up-to-date picture. Okay. This is what it looks like today.
Which one is that? Oh,
Ponam.
Ponam.
Here's what it looked like after we got done with it. 1944. And here it is today, actually. See this point there is this point here.
Wow.
And one of my shipmates, he says here that he got this off the internet. And they said the airfield down there was built by Australians and British. So he straightened them out and said, no, that was built by us. Oh, these are interesting pictures too. Yeah. We built a chapel and a cemetery. See, here's the open field, here's the chapel under construction, and there it is completed, and the graves are out and back. You can see the graves back there. You see, here's some more Quonset huts. We did a lot of earth moving, drainage procedures. Here we got drainage ditch, and here's some earth moving going on, and these are storage tanks for fuel. I worked on this project. This was another area, and here's a water tower. We usually used water purification systems so we could purify salt water to get fresh water. And then we'd store the purified water up there and have a little elevation, and it would run down to the showers. And see, here's the sort of thing we did a lot of. Here is a truck unloading. That could even be coral, broken crushed coral, and here it is leveled off, and here's a bulldozer moving it. A couple other scenes, they're moving dirt here or coral. And here's a scene of foundation work, and here's some more Quonset huts. We built a lot of Quonset huts. Fuel storage tanks, and here's someone standing on one taking pictures. Now this is a mess hall on Lorengau. This is frame construction, and here's a coral road we're building here with the bulldozer. Another scene of a water tower we built someplace. Another Quonset hut, and that's a mess hall. Oh, that's a receiving station. Okay, and here's one with an airplane. And here are other airplanes. This is on Okinawa, and this is after the war was over. This was taken August 28th, 45. Okay. This was taken August 12th, just shortly before the war ended. This is a picture of a drawing, I should say, of the Okinawa field we worked on. The blackened portion is how much we had finished when the war ended, and the outlined area are what we were going to do. Right. And continue working on it. And this is, as a matter of fact, Elmer V. Adams. He's got a note here. Copy of my last report, September 1945. Another scene around the airfields. I think these are fuel pumps that they used to pump fuel in. Here's a scene of an explosion, blasting coral so they can get it out of the water. And here they are digging it out of the water after that blast loosens it. That's this construction scene with the construction equipment. Okay. Oh, here's some smaller pictures. Seabees from Greater Boston. Here we are swimming in I think this was a New Caledonia. We were really disappointed. We got down on the Admiralties in November of 1944, and most other units went to Australia for R&R. They sent us to New Caledonia. Well, we were really disappointed. Although New Caledonia is a nice place, and it's civilized and so forth. And they had young girls there, black and so forth. As a matter of fact, they had a brothel there in Noumea, which is the capital city of New Caledonia. It was a French-controlled island at that time. Okay. And the guys would line up to go to see the girls. And the Navy had a special treatment room in the brothel for giving the guys a prophylactic cleaning after they had sex with the prostitute. Okay, here's some of the pictures that took place. We had a little deer that we captured on New Caledonia. And this is our church setting. We had a church there, and we'd have Protestant services, Catholic services. As a matter of fact, our chaplain, our was a Roman Catholic.
Mhm.
Then we'd have Jewish services too. Here's another scene with the chaplain, he's in the middle here, and there's our church. Here's our Bambi, we called it Bambi. But we couldn't take it on the island with us, or on the ship with us, so we left it there. Some other scenes, here's somebody's water boarding. What are these guys doing? Drinking coffee. There's a guy with a goose or something. So some of the things that took place, here's the guy waterboarding again.
Mhm.
And here we're putting up the church flag on a Sunday.
Okay.
And here we're getting swimming training. They didn't know what to do with us half the time. Yeah, this is a Japanese small craft that we rebuilt so we could use it.
Mhm.
And some other interesting scenes. This is the guy who did the paintings.
Oh, okay.
And he's with two New Caledonian policemen. And this is a Japanese small boat that was damaged and sunk, and we raised it up and put it back in service. Our camp in Okinawa was about 50 yards from this cliff looking down into the water. Here we are getting onto a ship, a troop ship. Well, that's about it.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. I'm the president of our World War II association,
Mhm.
and I collected a lot of this stuff doing that. I think that's about all I have to show you. So, how's the program going?
It's going well.
Wonderful.
After the interview, I have something to tell you about that you might be interested in. But let's see. I probably have a few more questions for you, though.
Oh, fine.
Let's see.
Are you a student?
Yeah, I go to Grand Valley.
Oh, yes.
Mhm.
I had two grandchildren graduated. Okay.
While you were training, did you get trained by any veterans from World War I?
No,
No?
no.
Okay.
That's kind of ironic. Since you asked, we got trained by combat experienced Marine Corps guys.
Oh,
And I think all of them had been on Guadalcanal in combat
okay.
when they came to train us.
Mhm.
And a little side note there is, when we first started training with them, I guess they hadn't had a lot of experience with us Seabees. And so, and we were not very good trainees. And, you know, some of these tough construction men, they're not about to take any guff from anyone.
Okay.
You know? And they started swearing at us. And some of these older construction men took issue with that.
Mhm.
And they told these Marines, hey guys, no more swearing at us, but they didn't stop. So our tough guys said, okay, we'll meet you out behind the barracks tonight.
Uh-huh.
And wear no insignia, and we'll see who's the toughest. Well, of course, our construction guys were. They never swore at us again. But it was a good learning lesson for us younger guys, you know. My gosh, we were a tough bunch of guys.
Mhm.
Okay, so no, we didn't get trained by World War I guys. Although, our commanding officer in the 78s was a World War I veteran.
Okay.
And a couple of our policemen, we called them master-at-arms, but they're basically camp policemen, were World War I veterans also.
Okay, did any of them ever talk about how things have changed since then, or how their experience was different?
Well, yes. We discussed primarily the differences in our living situations from various places in the country. And we probably discussed that more than anything. You know, I get acquainted with the guy from South Carolina. I remember the guys from Charleston, we called them Geechees. I don't know why. I read that in a book too. And we got to know guys from different locations, where their location was by their speech
Right.
patterns and so forth. And those kind of things. Oh, no, I know where you're from. You're from New York. Yeah. Oh, I can tell you, you're from Michigan, the way you talk. So we learned those things too. It was a fun thing.
Okay. And then it looks like you were in training for about 6 months before you left?
August to December. Let's see.
About 6 months.
Oh, it was 4 months.
4.
See, 6 months would be June.
Right, okay.
No, not 4 months. Yeah, 4 months. August, September, October, November, 5 months. 5 months.
Do you think that the training was good and that it prepared you for what you were?
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Mhm.
Okay. And then on your trip, did you have any duties that you had to do? Because you were, how long did you say it took you to get there?
33 months.
Yeah,
took us to
so
get
what
there.
kind of things did you do while you were?
Nothing. We had calisthenics in the morning, usually. Oh, a couple of things happened that made it awkward for us. One of the guys in our group developed spinal meningitis. So they quarantined us in the area where we lived, and that portion reflected up on deck, so we could only go on deck in that area. And we always had to go to the mess hall last,
Oh,
so we couldn't contaminate. But actually, that's the only guy who developed it. Apparently, they caught it early enough or the time when it couldn't be transmitted to anyone else.
did it get better?
Oh, yes,
That's
he
good.
recovered. We didn't like the last, by the way, on the transporting as a troop, we only had 2 meals a day. And one day, we, being the last ones in the group, found worms in our food. It was macaroni and hamburgers combination. So one of the guys took his plate up to the captain of the ship, and he said, "We can't eat this." So they prepared another meal for us.
That's pretty gross.
Yeah, and well, we got pretty stinky too traveling, because at first we tried the saltwater showers, but the soap is kind of like lard, and you couldn't hardly rinse it off. It's supposed to be made to work with salt water, but it didn't work very good. So we just quit taking a shower. So we got pretty stinky as a result.
What was the weather like during your voyage? Was there any big storms that you had to deal with?
No.
No, it's pretty nice.
Although when we were on Okinawa, on the island, we experienced 2 typhoons. One was a real bad one. Fortunately, it didn't hit our areas too bad, but it drove some ships on the land and sunk some ships out at sea. Actually, in our particular tent, we were kind of up on a point there, and our tent split right up the middle. And what we had done, see, these tents had a side curtain. See, the ropes would go up about 4 feet, and you had a center pole up, and then the top of the tent went down there, and then you had the guy ropes down to stakes in the ground, and then the portion up to where the ropes tied into the tent, there was a curtain that you could either hang down or roll up. We always left them rolled up because we like to keep it cool and a little breeze blowing through. Well, we let the curtain down during the typhoon, but our tent split up. We put all of our clothes and our bunks and everything around the center pole and split, and all of the stuff got wet and so forth. But that, we lived with it, didn't matter.
Let's see. All these islands that you visited in Okinawa, did you ever have any direct contact with citizens there?
Oh,
People
yes.
that live there? What was it? Were they really different?
The ones on at the Admiralties were all black.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, they're native folks. And
Mm-hmm.
yes, we visited them there, and I didn't get too much involved with that sort of thing. Some of the guys did. I'm sure. Oh yeah, there's some pictures.
They seemed to get along well, though, or they just kind
Pardon?
of stay away? Did they seem to get along with Americans that were there? Or did they
Oh,
just
yes.
kinda- okay.
The Americans, we always had a good time with the citizens. And still true today, even in Iraq.
Mm-hmm.
See, here's some, these are in New Guinea.
Okay.
See, it tells us there, and, New Guinea natives.
Mm-hmm.
And these are in the Admiralty Islands.
Okay.
And they're all black and nice people.
Mhm.
We enjoyed their company and so forth. Okinawa was much more civilized.
Oh.
Okay. Here's the Okinawa people and some of the scenes of them moving. And see, here's some of those tombs
Okay.
that they have there. And unfortunately, Okinawans were, see, people think they're Japanese, but they're not. See, they're a different ethnic group.
Uh-huh.
I didn't know that either until I went back there in 1995.
Right.
And they don't like the Japanese. But the Japanese told them when we got there, when the Americans come, they're going to rape the children and women and treat you foully and kill you and so forth. So as the battle continued, the people of Okinawa moved behind the Japanese lines to stay away from us because we're bad guys. Well, our ships from the Navy were called upon to shoot towards the Japanese, shoot big cannons from the, shoot cannon to the Japanese lines and behind them. And as a consequence, there are almost 140,000 civilians killed
Mm-hmm.
in the battle. There were 100,000 Japanese army killed. We lost 15,000, 14,000 actually. 9,000 Army and Marine Corps, and 5,000 Navy guys were killed by kamikazes. And so there were over 250,000 people killed on Okinawa. And that was a microcosm for invasion, for the Japanese fighting that would go on the homeland. And so that was information that President Truman was able to use to send the atomic bomb raids to Japan.
Mm-hmm.
And we're glad he did, although when we heard about the atomic bombs, we were scared.
Yeah.
We thought, oh boy, if we have them,
Who else?
they have them too, and where are they gonna drop them? On Okinawa, where we are. So, that's some of the history. I learned some of that when I went back 50 years later.
While you were there, did you, what you called Liberty, did you ever take any time on leave? Like just get to go and hang out around the island, take some time off?
Yes, all we did was, well, of course, when we were around Okinawa and the Admiralties, there was no place to go.
Yeah.
One little experience we had that was fun, when we were on the way to Okinawa, another advanced base area was Ulithi. Ulithi was in, I forgot now, Marshall Islands Group. And there we stayed for a week or so, just anchored in the harbor. And they had a recreation, small island that they've built up for recreational purposes.
Okay.
And they let us go ashore there, and they built tennis courts, ball fields, basketball courts, and we could drink beer. That's another thing. And drink all the beer you want. So the guys would go get blasted, get drunk. They get fights and, just kind of blow steam off.
Yeah.
And that was a lot of fun. Everyone, they let a company go at a time from our group, so it worked out great. And it's one of the little times we had for recreation. But, we enjoyed a pretty good life in our camps. I remember when we were at a little place up in the Admiralties called Bucho Lane.
Okay.
And we built what they call a section base. And that was a base facility for taking care of minesweepers. Minesweeper is a small wooden ship that doesn't have a magnetic attraction to mines. So we always had an ice machine in our kitchen. And we could buy 2 cans of beer a week. So what we do in my tent, we would save our beer for our time off. Now we aren't pressing so hard to get things done, and we weren't working 24/7, maybe 24/6s.
Okay.
And Sunday we'd go get a bucket of ice and put our beer in there, and buy cigars at the ship's door, and then we'd play poker all afternoon and have a relaxing time doing it. And drink beer and have a good time.
While you were there, were you able to communicate with your family or friends or girlfriend you might have back home?
Yes, we wrote letters and got letters from home. A little connection with that. Our mail was all censored. Anything we sent home was censored.
Right.
And so nobody ever knew where I was because I couldn't tell.
Okay.
And as I told you, when our mother died in 1937, so my dad wasn't much of a letter writer, even though he was a school teacher. He'd write 1 or 2 paragraphs and that was it. But mother had 8 sisters, and so they wrote to us boys. They go right to the boys. So I'd get letters from my aunts. And I got a letter from one of my aunts, and she told me my brother Dale was on Okinawa. This was after the battle started and so forth. Obviously, he could write home where he was. See. No, that wasn't from my aunt. My cousin. They told me my cousin was on Aniweeshop. That's another island. And so when we headed to Okinawa, we stopped in Aniweeshop, and I knew my cousin was there, so I went ashore to see him. I got permission, and we were chatting there, and then by then we knew where we were going, because we didn't usually know if we got on the boat until we were out to sea. Then we were told that we're going to Okinawa. So, I told him we'd go to Okinawa. He said, your brother Dale's there. And I didn't know that. He apparently had found out from one of the aunts. His mother was one of my mother's sisters. So anyway, I got to Okinawa, and I was standing in the chow line one day, and I noticed an Army Jeep driving in. And 2 grubby-looking soldiers. They always looked a lot grubbier than we did, because we had a laundry and we had good clothes and so forth. And grubby-looking soldiers got out and went into our company tent, which was across the street, and then they came out. And they had their steel helmets on. We didn't have to wear our steel helmets after we were there a while, because we never got any. Didn't get shot at or anything. Anyway, they took the steel helmets off, and one of them was my brother.
Oh.
And he had known this cousin I wrote to, stopped to see. He had written home to one of the aunts, and that aunt had written to my brother and said, Cam's coming to Okinawa. So they all knew I was coming, so he alerted his men and told them to keep track of trucks were driving around for the Seabees, because we always had our ID numbers on the trucks.
Right.
And sure enough, he knew I was there, and they saw it. And he found out where we were. He was coming back that particular day to visit some of his men who were in the hospital, wounded men.
So did you get to hang out with him for a while?
Pardon?
Did you get to hang out with him for a
Oh,
while?
yes, oh, yes. Probably half a dozen times.
Oh, that's nice.
And I used to hitchhike to his campsite. Now I always had to carry a weapon with me. As a matter of fact, I carried this pistol with me. They wouldn't let us out of camp unless we had a weapon with us. And by the way, then, when we get to islands like that, when the battle's going on, they always give us ammunition. Well, when the battle's over, we had to turn it in.
During your 3-month voyage through the Pacific, did you ever have any scares of kamikazes or any encounters with any? No?
No.
Okay. And then, so while you're on the islands, and you didn't directly encounter any Japanese?
No. We just had air raids, a nuisance thing, and but we did. That's the only encountering we had. And we'd get air raid signals, and we'd turn the lights off and sit and wait. And we're in the movie until the lights came back on, and then we'd watch the rest of the movie. But one night, I quit early. One night, they turned the lights off 5 times, and they didn't get the movie. Of course, they always had to start the movies after dark, because it was outside. We had an outdoor theater, of course, that we built. And I left probably at midnight, and some guy stayed up for the whole movie. So we saw them all.
How was when you said you had the Okinawa reunion in 1995? What was that like? What happened there?
A mountaintop experience. Oh, fantastic. We flew in there from, and the plane I was on was from Osaka, Japan.
Okay.
And we got off the plane at Naha Airport. Naha is the capital of Okinawa.
Okay.
And when we walked off the plane, there must have been 40 or 50 of our military people waiting there for us. And when we got off the plane, they clapped for us. And I said to one guy, "Hey, what's going on?" He said, "We welcome you guys back. You won the big one." I said, "Hey, you don't have to clap for me. I was no combat soldier. I was just a dumb old tractor driver." He said, "No, you guys were all heroes." Made you feel pretty good. So it was, other than that, we had a special ceremony every night for different services. We had a special Navy ceremony in the afternoon, and they cast 5 wreaths on the water for the battle bed. Then another time, we had a pass and review. They named a medical hospital after one of the sailors who had been awarded the Medal of Honor. He was a corpsman, and he was there, by the way. And they named the medical facility after him. And I played golf there too, and I went jogging. I'm a jogger. I jogged by here this morning.
Okay.
When we were in Osaka. Funny thing happened. We were in a fancy Japanese hotel. Nice place. And so I wanted to go jogging in the morning. Our flight didn't leave for Okinawa until 11 o'clock, and I was with another fellow. That was 12 years ago, so I was 70. He was 85. Anyway, he was my roommate, and he was one of my shipmates from World War II. And so I went jogging, and we're at a nice boulevard street with an island in the middle and trees growing, and so I thought I'd run down that way on one side of the boulevard and then come back on the other way. Simple. So I did that. And so I got down their way, and all of a sudden, the 2 streets split like that. Well, okay, I'll just jog down there a ways, because what I do is time myself. I usually try to run for 15 or 30 minutes, so I go 15 minutes away and 15 back. So I got to my 15 away, and I went across to find a way back, and I couldn't find it. And all the street names are in Japanese, of course. And so I started asking people, where's the Nikko Hotel? And they all looked at me blankly. They can't speak English, they don't know what I'm asking. So I kept wandering along. Finally I came to a taxi. I didn't have any money, so I couldn't take a taxi, but I said, where's the Nikko Hotel? He pointed like that. Okay. So I went that way. Pretty soon I came to another taxi. And he said, oh, but he pointed too. He couldn't understand. And I went to that street, and it was a one-way street, and I went down the right direction. And there was a lady out there that had a little shops along the side. She was sweeping the street. I asked her, where's the Nikko Hotel? Oh, she said, you go down there 3 squares and 1 square that way. And she spoke English.
That's
Got
good.
back. And my roommate, I think I left around 6 a.m. And my roommate, we had to have our bags out at 7. And I had my big bag all packed, but my carry-on, I put my running clothes in. So he put the bags out at 7.
Right.
And when he was outside in the hallway, the door closed. And I had the key to couldn't get back. So he went down to the lobby and he asked them, I need a key for 6012. They couldn't understand. So he finally went and worked on a door like this. 6012, so we got that. Anyway, some other things happened. My roommate's grandson was in the Marine Corps there.
Okay.
And he had broken his ankle, he jumped off a truck. He was in civilian clothes, but in one of these, we took him with us in one of these special meetings. And the commandant of the Marine Corps was there. That's 4 stars. He's a full general. So we introduced this private, this grandson of my roommate to the 4-star general. Fantastic. But while we were there, the Okinawans had a special ceremony for themselves.
Okay.
They read all the names of the Okinawan people who were killed in the battle. And they spent 2 nights and 3 days reading all those names.
I was gonna say, it must have been a lot of names.
140,000, sure. Yeah, and then they built a gardens of remembrance, and they had pillars put around this garden, and they had trees planted there too, and they had names on these pillars of people who were killed. Then we had a special ceremony where a Japanese person and an American person got together, and they planted trees together in this special ceremony. So it was fantastic, just outstanding. And I wish my brother, he was deceased, he died in 85.
Okay.
And he couldn't have been there, I wish he could have.
How long did it last?
Pardon?
How long did it last? How long were you there?
A week, we
Okay.
were there a week. Yep.
So on your sheet here, notice that you were in the reserve as well.
Oh, yes, I spent 22 years in the reserve.
And it looked like you helped train some people
Oh,
for
yes.
Vietnam.
Yes, Vietnam and for Korea.
Okay.
Yes, I enlisted in 1947,
Mm-hmm.
and I got a commission in 1949, and then I retired in 1969, so I spent 22 years in the reserve.
Where did you, this training for the other,
Muskegon.
Muskegon?
I spent
Okay.
a lot of time in Muskegon, but I was in Flint for a short time too, and I was in Lansing for a short time.
Was there any major components of the training that you noticed that were a lot different from what you did in World War II? No.
No, not
And what did you say you're the president of?
Pardon?
You said you're the president of,
Oh, my family-owned company,
okay.
Kelly Sales and Engineering Company. I studied civil engineering at Michigan State, structural engineering, and then I worked for Shaw Box in Muskegon. I was called Lift Tech. And they manufacture overhead bridge cranes and hoists and ladder equipment. So I started a business in 1963, my wife and I did, and it operated until 2002. And I had my sons join us in the business, and the granddaughter, and so forth. I was president and CEO of that for many years.
Did you retire in 2002 then?
Well, we closed the business,
Uh-huh.
but I retired actually in 1990.
Okay.
That's when they started growing Social Security.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm still working. I still do structural engineering, and I'm a professional engineer today, and I seal drawings and make drawings and do structural analysis and things like that.
Okay. Let's see. Do you think that they should reinstate the draft now?
I don't think so, really. I think they're getting enough volunteers
Mm-hmm.
to do the required military, activities that we have.
Mm-hmm.
I have a grandson in the Army.
Okay.
Matter of fact, he's leaving probably in a couple of months for Iraq again.
Mm.
And those boys and girls now too,
Yep.
they figure they have a job to do. And that's right, they do. And they accept it, they don't have a problem with going over there. And as a matter of fact, the Iraqis welcome them.
Mm-hmm.
Particularly these young guys, they get candy, the kids, and the Seabees are there too. And they, the Seabees, are rebuilding infrastructure that was damaged during the battles, and also they're improving existing infrastructure that wasn't up to our standards in our country, and they're doing a lot of good. Our country is doing a lot of good. It's unfortunate that it's got a bad reputation and people are mad about it and so forth, but I think it's good.
Do you have any other particular memories that you want to talk about, or do you think you've gone through everything?
You want to know how I met my wife?
Sure.
Okay. After the war, since I was so young, they had a point system, and your age was a factor in determining points.
Mm-hmm.
How long you'd been in the service, how much you'd been overseas, and whether you had a family at home, and so forth. So, since I was so young and hadn't been over so much, I didn't get discharged. I came back, Thanksgiving Day I got back, Thanksgiving Day 1945.
Mm-hmm.
And I had 30 days leave coming, so I went home for 30 days. And I went back to duty at Navy Pier in Chicago. Well, they didn't know what to do with me. But then they figured, oh, we got a job for you. So they made me a shore patrol, military policeman.
Okay.
And I lived in a hotel in Chicago, and I rode trains between Chicago and Buffalo and back, and I patrolled the trains and checked leave papers and so forth. And with an Army guy who was doing the same thing. But we had free evenings, a lot of free evenings, so again, I couldn't go to a bar and drink, I was only 20. So we looked for a place where we could find girls our age, there are other guys like me in the same situation. As a matter of fact, one of the guys, one of my shipmates, one of my best friends in the service, was doing the same things I was. But he changed his ID card to show that he was 21, that he could go and drink, and he got caught. He dropped it one place, and an officer saw it, and they put him in jail for 7 days. But anyway, we're looking for places where we could meet the next girl, and we were really looking for sex. We just wanted to have a good time. The war's over, and we're in uniform. So one night we went to a roller skating rink and told a girl there that we were talking to, we wanted to do it. Oh, go to the Aragon Ballroom, she said. That's north side of Chicago, and you get on the elevator and go up to Lawrence Avenue and get off. So we did. The next time we were free together, there were 3 of us, I think, and we got there and paid our way in, and gee, a nice place, They got lights shining on the ceiling that show clouds moving, and I think Eddie Howard, he was a popular band back there. It had live music, of course. But as we wandered around looking things over, we discovered that they were having a special party there. And there were no unescorted girls. So we were complaining to the girl at the cigarette and candy counter. My voice is wearing out. And she said, I'll do something I've never done before. I'll give you the phone number of two nice girls who live right around the corner. And maybe they'll come over and dance with you.
Okay.
And we told her, that's all we want to do. We just want to have someone to dance with and a good time. So, okay, so we went and called. I did the talking. And sure, they'll come over. They came over. Since I had done the talking, I had my choice of two girls. And I picked Ruth. And this was in January. We got married in September.
Wow.
46, and we've been married 61 years. She was from a little country town called Brimfield in Illinois, near Peoria. And that's has been a good marriage. We've got 3 sons, and we have 7 grandchildren, and 5 great-grandchildren. We live down in Windriff condominiums here. As I told you, 2 of our grandchildren graduated from Grand Valley. Oh, another thing, just to show you how families got involved in World War II. You know I had 3 brothers in the service. Then 2 of them married Army women. My oldest brother married an Army nurse, and my next older brother married a WAC, Women's Army Corps, WAC. They trained, he and she were in Lemoore, California, and they trained pilots in what they call link trainers. A link trainer was a device built with all the controls that you find on an airplane, and all the gauges and stuff, and is motorized, so an outside instructor can turn the plane and do things with it, and the trainee has to recover from so on. Anyway, they were instructors of doing that. And then Ruth had 3 older brothers, my wife, in the military as well. Then I had 2 sisters who married Army guys, too. As a matter of fact, my younger sister, her husband died. Then my older sister died, and her husband was a former Army guy, and he married my younger sister, too. But anyway, in our 2 families, there were 11 of us who were associated in the war, participating in the war.
A lot of people were involved in it.
So, anything else?
No, I think we're good. But I